Hello crafters and welcome to the HobbyMaker tutorial site. Thanks for joining me. I'm James Hembrow and we're going to have a little bit of a closer look now at the different types of stamps in our little series here of the introduction to stamps and ink pads. Now up until now we've kind of looked at ink pads and the different types of families. Now we're going to do exactly the same with stamps, and then we'll bring the two together and I'll show you lots of different techniques and things you can do with them. Now rubber stamps, clear stamps, photopolymer stamps, acrylic stamps, they're all different things that you've possibly heard, even wooden block stamps. So I'm just going to help clear those up for maybe some of you who have just started crafting, and also it's a really great way just to remind ourselves of where all of this has come from. So there's predominantly kind of three different types of stamps as we would really know them, and it would have started off originally as rubber stamps, because as I said right at the very beginning of this series, it started back in the 1800s with sort of stamps used in businesses, and they were the first rubber stamps. And right to today we still use the same process of making those rubber stamps here in the UK. And such stamps as this one here, be it a grey rubber or maybe even a really large one like here like a red rubber, they can come in different colours, but predominantly they are the same type of product, and they will look very, very similar as we can see there. So we've got all that sort of depth there, and where the raised areas are on the stamps, that's where it's actually going to transfer the ink, and then you've got those other areas there in the valleys which are going to be left uninked. So we'll have a look at those in a minute as well, but that's one type of stamp which we tend to always see first. Now traditionally, again, maybe go back a few years, those would have always been mounted on wooden blocks, but nowadays they tend to always be like this, pre-cut out, and on the back of every rubber stamp you can see there that's just shining, there's this little surface that is got a cling mount on it, which you can see just there, just catching the light. And that's actually not sticky or even clinging really to my hand in any way whatsoever. However, as soon as you bring in an acrylic block, and I've got a few here in various different shapes and sizes, I know they're not necessarily easy to see because they're completely clear, but they can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes like this. Some can be super thin, so they're really easy to flex and maybe apply pressure in different ways. Some are really chunky because they're easy to pick up. Maybe they've even got little grips around them so you can put them down and stamp in different ways. Some of them can be really quite chunky, like this big block that I've got here for your larger stamps. Now obviously the larger the acrylic blocks, the harder it can be to sort of handle those. So it's very much a personal preference on what sort of acrylic block that you would like. But I've just got a couple here just to have a look at. We'll just have a look at this one grey rubber stamp here. So again, traditionally, as I was saying, these would have come many, many years ago now, possibly even what we would have said was uncut. I think it's just worth mentioning that. So I've got here a set of stamps that you could have had many years ago that would have been uncut, and you would have actually had to have trimmed these out of the rubber yourself by hand, and then as a crafter or a maker, and then mounted them onto some of this cling mount or foam mount, something like this, which allows them to then stick to your acrylic block. But nowadays, I'm really pleased to say, trust me, because I've spent many hours cutting them out and mounting them up, but pretty much anything you're going to be buying here on HobbyMaker, I think all the suppliers, to be honest with you nowadays, they come pre-cut and they come pre-mounted just like this, either in grey or red rubber. Now, all you then need to do, when the backs are nice and clean, there's no need to treat these with anything, spray them with anything sticky, don't be tempted to do that. The best thing you can do is just wipe them down with water to keep them clean, maybe just a tiny drop or two of fairy liquid in the water just to keep that surface nice and clean. And you will find that just through sort of almost static, that will actually attach itself quite nicely to any flat, shiny surface, just like that clear acrylic stamp block there, and you can see the stamp is on there well and truly, and that's now ready for me to use just if I was going to imprint that, ink that up and then stamp it out, which we'll have a look at the basic technique of stamping in another short video. But that's all you really need with your rubber stamp and your acrylic block, just to mount those on there. It's as simple as that. You push it down and it's mounted on there. So that's all we're talking about when we talk about different types of rubber stamps and cling backs, and also how to look after that back. Just very simple with water. Don't be tempted to use something like maybe I'm going to say a duster, but something that's kind of got lots of loose fibres, because if you clean or dry the back of this with anything with loose fibres, you will find that the fibres will almost stick to it ever so slightly. It's better to use something like a microfiber cloth, something like this, something that's not going to shed its fibres, just so you can dry it off, or even just let it air dry once you've cleaned the back of it. So that's how to just look after and maintain your stamps, because if you look after your stamps, and this is a great thing with stamping and inking, there's just so much you can do with them, and it's such great value. This one stamp alone, you're going to purchase it, you're going to invest into it, and you're going to be able to recreate this image time and time and time again. And trust me, I've got stamps many, many years old, and they're just as good as new if you look after them. Rubber stamps and clear stamps, which we'll look at in a minute, will last you for many, many years to come. So that's just one type of stamp. That's looking at rubber. Now the differences between grey and red rubber, really, I won't complicate things too much. It's just a different type of material. It's also a different type of process and how they're made, in the sense of the heating of them, how they're performing, how you actually manufacture them. So you've just got slightly different melting points, really, that's all. And you may find, as you get more and more into your stamping, which I certainly hope you do, because it's a great area of craft, is you may find that your red rubbers are possibly sometimes reserved for stamps with a lot more detail. A lot of crafters, and I think I'm possibly in agreement with this, I find that the red rubber has slightly more detail. So if you've got a stamp that's got lots of fine lines, a lot of detail, something maybe like this design here that I've got, I'll just show you that one there, loads and loads of different designs in that one block stamp, really big one there, by Stampers Anonymous, and you can see loads of detail, and that's been done in red rubber for that exact reason. And this is just like the grey one. It's exactly the same. It's red rubber, nice and flexible. I've looked after my stamps, kept them nice and clean, and that is that sticky pad, or that cling back on the background there. Now this is probably just a good opportunity just to talk about other ways, if you like, of applying your stamps, because we've looked at acrylic blocks, and that's sort of traditionally how we started off with mounting rubber stamps when they started to not come on a wooden block, and that's how we can, just so much easier to store rubber stamps when they're that thin. If you think about every single stamp that you may collect being mounted on a block, it takes up an awful lot of storage, so this makes a lot more sense to have them like this, loose, and also lots more different ways of being able to work with them, because you can even imprint them holding them into your hand if you want a sort of a loose way of stamping, so it's a really nice way of working. So working with them on the acrylic block like that is one way, but let me just pop that to one side there, because what I've got here is a stamping press, and there's loads and loads of different types of stamping presses on the market. This is just the chosen one that I work with. This is a Sizzix one, and it just shows when you get a large stamping platform like this, how it really comes into its own. Now what a stamping platform is, and I'm not going to complicate things, this comes with it, but I'm just going to pop this to one side because that's for stenciling. But a stamping platform tends to work in one or two different ways. You're going to have a background, something like this here, which is magnetic, and you use magnets to hold your cardstock in place. Or in the case of this one, it's actually got a sticky grid, again a little bit like the back of the stamp. It's not really sticky to touch, but it's strong enough to hold your cardstock in place. So that's now stuck down. So my hands don't stick to it, but the cardstock is now stuck to that absolutely perfectly. So I've got my paper in position, or my cardstock in position. And then the top of the stamping platform that you saw me took away, again, works in different ways. This one you actually put into the hinges and then fold down. Some just have, maybe they're folded this way, some have edges, some have returns. This is a particularly large one, but it just shows how, if you can go to a larger stamping platform, when you get a large stamp like this, it really comes into its own, because I can now place that onto the top of my stamping platform. That in effect becomes my acrylic block, and then I've got that to be able to stamp down onto my card or paper that I've got underneath. So it's just a different way of applying your stamp. So what I would actually normally do here, I'll just show you if I peel that off, is that I would actually position my stamp exactly over the top of the cardstock, close the lid of the stamping platform down, whatever it may be, give it a little push, and then I can pick that stamp up, and then it's attached to the top of my stamping platform. I would then ink that up, and we'll have a look at this at a later stage, and then I can fold that down and I can make an imprint. And the great thing with stamping platforms, and they're all the same in this principle, is it allows you to have a registration mark. And what I mean by that is I could take that off now, ink it up again, maybe in a different colour or even the same ink, and keep printing and keep pressing down in the same area, and it allows me to build up the solidness nature of that particular ink. So if it's maybe not stamped out perfectly the first time, maybe it's a really detailed stamp, or maybe you're going to build up different colours, or you're going to layer stamps, this is why you maybe use a stamping platform. But I also find myself using stamping platforms more so than other blocks as well now for lots of different projects. Depends on what I'm doing. So that's just another alternative to the acrylic blocks that we looked at there. But they both work in the same principle. It's a way of attaching your stamp to an acrylic surface to then be able to either push down or fold down and make a print from. So that's our rubber stamp family. Let me just move this to one side. And having looked at the red and grey rubbers, I'll just pop those there. Let's now have a little look at photopolymer stamps. Now there is one other sort of family of stamps that you sometimes hear mentioned, and that's acrylic. I don't have any here. You very, very rarely see acrylic stamps nowadays. They were some of the first clear stamps, so you may come across them, possibly, in stash that other people have got, but they tend to be clear stamps, some of the first ones that came out that are also pre-mounted onto some sort of perspex. And they were great because they made easy registration because they were clear, you could see through them, but they didn't wear as well as the modern photopolymer stamps that we have today. Again, it makes it so much easier for us makers and crafters, which is great. So again, all the stamps that you can see from various different suppliers here on HobbyMaker, they're clear stamps, they're virtually all photopolymer stamps without a doubt, and they're all made in a very clever process, which gives us the benefit of having, I'm just going to show you this one packet here of how they come. So this is one particularly large clear stamp by Stacey Parks, and they're going to come at something like that. Now if I just bring in a sheet of cardstock that we've got here, and you'll be able to see the design underneath and what this clear, there we go, what this clear stamp looks like. So what you've actually got with all clear stamps is 2 layers of clear, call it acetate sheet for want of a better word, because you'll know what I mean, tend to be either thicker or thinner. I'm just peeling that off of the surface now. That's our stamp surface, and then on the other side I've got a slightly thinner sheet, and that shows us the printed design that we're going to actually get when we use our stamp. And then this here, that is our clear photopolymer stamp. So you can see the benefits of this straight away over rubber stamps. Is we can see as crafters and makers straight through our stamp when we're pressing down and printing, we can see exactly where we're doing. So maybe if this were a sentiment or you wanted to get the texture in a particular place on your project, you can look through the acrylic block that this is mounted on and straight through the stamp, and you would be able to see exactly where you're stamping for your registration. So clear stamps are a great way of working. Now we still very much see both types of stamps here on HobbyMaker all the time from different suppliers, and the reason is they both perform different tasks. Red rubber is, as I said, is still really good for fine detail, as is photopolymer. Photopolymer is great for cleaning up, as is red rubber. The real difference comes in where you may choose one or the other. It depends on the type of project you're going to work on. So if you're going to do something that maybe involves a lot of heat or maybe solvent-based inks, which we looked at in the other video when we talked about inks like maybe StazOn and also StazOn pigments and things like that, they have a little bit more of an aggressive nature about them in the type of solvent base, and they can affect some of your clear stamps. So it is always best to just check your stamps. But as a rule of thumb, it's better to leave your sort of more solvent-based inks for things like your red rubber. Red rubber is a lot more harder wearing. It can also take heat where the clear stamps can't. So if you were, for example, doing some heat embossing and you actually wanted to press an image down into some hot embossed powder onto a project to actually leave an imprint, that's where your red rubber stamps come from. Or maybe if you want to pour resin over the top of something to take an imprint away from your stamp, because there's so many different ways you can use stamps. As I was saying, they're so versatile, such good investment. As well as stamping with them, you can use them almost like a mould to sort of pour hot resin over the top. Again, red rubber would work perfectly for that because they hold up to much higher temperatures. But your clear stamps, you tend to really want to keep away from your multimedia projects where you're involving lots of heat. And these are absolutely perfect for your inking and stamping techniques. Again, where you're using more sort of friendly inks and maybe less so for your solvent-based types of inks. Now that just leads me on to one final thing where we're just looking at the different types of inks, and it tends to be those two families, the photopolymer clear stamps and also the red rubber stamps. And that's how to not only look after the back of your red rubber stamps that we looked at, but also how to clean and look after the top surfaces of both your red rubber and your clear stamps. Well, clear stamps can come in, I know I'm showing you a large one there, I'm just going to very quickly show you another version, again, for maybe those of you that are completely new to stamping. because it just helps to make the whole thing a lot clearer. There you go, you can see here that this design on the front is going to be made up of a series of these designs that you can see just here, and they're still held in that same carrier sheet where we've got the black printed design elements to show us what stamps, and all we would do in this case, because they're much smaller, is peel off the little elements. I know they're a bit clear there, so they're difficult to see, but you can clear off those little elements and again mount those onto an acrylic block or a stamping platform, whatever you want to choose, to then actually work with those and stamp with. So whether they're small or large stamps, they work in exactly the same way, these clear photopolymer stamps. And they're a great way of storing and categorising your stamps. If you're like me, I'm a bit of a clean freak, and I like to be really organised and have everything nicely put away, and I just find that these sheets work so well. So looking after these and keeping these clean, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. Certainly your red rubber, you can use, again, a little bit of fairy liquid, maybe even a brush if you want to, a light brush to go over the surface to really work away those inks. Depends how much you want to keep them clean. I know these ones are particularly clean. This one here is brand new, just taken it out of the pack to show you what a clear one looks like. But again, they will stain, so don't worry as crafters and makers if your inks do stain, and they will start to show different colours and black. They're going to get grubby, they're going to get well loved and well used. I always think that's a really good sign when you see that. So don't panic if they get stained. It won't affect the printing nature that you get from your stamps at all. But to keep them clean, you can just use warm soapy water on either of these without any problems. Now, if you want to kind of look after your clear stamp and just condition it, for want of a better word, then you can get cleaners like this one I've got here just to show you. This is a clear stamp cleaner. So this is particularly for clear stamps, and it's designed to look after the photopolymer clear stamps, specifically if you've possibly used them with some more aggressive inks, maybe something solvent based, and you want to give it a really good clean and get it off there so it doesn't affect the surface of the clear photopolymer stamp. For the clear stamps, you can also get, for example, an archival ink cleaner. Now, archival inks, we know from the previous videos, they're dye-based, but they are also an oil base within that dye to use them. Sometimes they are a little bit harder to clean off of your stamps. It depends on how particular you are, but you can even get a cleaner for archival ink, which works really well on clear and rubber stamps, but it's specifically been designed to be a little bit more lighter and more caring for your clear stamp, something like that. And then finally, if you're really into using an awful lot of solvent-based inks, something like the StazOn that we looked at earlier, it's a lot more aggressive on your clear stamps, but even on your red rubber stamps, it can be quite difficult to clean off. And if you really want to clean them off because you're going to use a different colour, or just want to keep things clean, then you can actually get a very specific StazOn solvent-based cleaner. So I think it's just worthwhile mentioning 2 or 3 of these different types of cleaners that you can use to clean your red rubber stamps and your clear stamps, and why you would do that in different scenarios depending on what you're using. But if you're using pretty much any other sort of dye-based inks that we looked at and pigment-based inks, it's only really your StazOn and your oil-based archivals where you need to think about how you're going to clean them. Anything else, if it's water-based, as we learned in the previous videos, we know it's going to work really well with warm soapy water and clean those back to looking almost like new. But they will stain, and that just shows that you really love to use your stamps, so don't panic about it. They still work absolutely fine. It's just getting the worst off and using just a very light brush to get in between the little nooks and crannies of the different areas of the stamps. So I hope that's helped just to demystify a little bit about the sort of main 2 different types of stamps there, your red rubber, your acrylic, how you can look after them, also how you can use them in different ways and what the different purposes for those are, and also the acrylic blocks and the stamping platforms as well. So I hope that's given you a much clearer view. We're going to now look at how we can use both the stamps and the inks together in different ways, and just go through the very basic process of stamping an image for the very first time. So I hope you can join me for the next series of videos, and in the meantime, if you'd like to like and subscribe, click that bell down below, and then HobbyMaker Tutorial YouTube site will then notify all of you straight away as soon as there is a new video uploaded. And until then, I look forward to seeing you all again.